Hi.
Hi. Hi.
It took a little minute, but we got there.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I'm excited. Um, so
I love your snazzy glasses. We both are pretty fetching with the fashion.
yeah, well, we have to be cool. Graham wants us to be cool.
Exactly.
Listen, I've got in front of me what you. Firstly, let me sort of share with the audience how this came about. It came about like I was just flicking through Instagram as you do, and you came up. There wasn't any reason I reached out. I was just compelled to. I sort of felt an energy, um, and I reached out because of that. It wasn't anything like, oh boy, she's got 1 million followers. It had nothing to do with that. It was an energy. I thought I've got to talk to this person, see what I can learn, see how I can brush up on my spirituality and skills. And but before we go on, have I got your permission to talk about the incredible things that you've conquered so far in your life?
Absolutely. But I first have to tell you that how I came across you, it actually didn't start where, I mean, I guess you saw my post, but I actually saw you in a Kabbalah class and I said,
What?
who's this guy? It was. You were in a class with me, and I said, this guy has there's something there, right? There's that you can just sort of feel it. It's an energy, and I was like, let me learn more about him. And so I decided to follow you and read a lot about your journey, and actually watch one of your YouTube videos and your story. So I said to myself, I can learn a lot from this man, from businesses to their spirituality and where you're coaching and so much. So the feelings are mutual.
I've been around the block a little bit, so yeah, it's you know, I, without I'll go to yours first, but I was a late starter to spirituality. Come from a long line of ego. What I mean by that is, there was the I've been through kind of the show business and the fashion business and the PR business. So all very egotistical based businesses. And, put that together with being an Aquarian and, you can't even talk to me. So, uh, so that went on for a long time. And, I really enjoyed that ego. When I think back, I think, I had a great time, but it was, you know, looking back, it was shallow.
Mm,
It was a good time. I had great experience, had a great life up till now, and hope that continues.
yes.
But then it's time for a little depth. It was all very. When I look back at some people that I've in Australia, where I'm from, when I look back at that, when I visit there, without judging people, they're still doing the same thing, pedaling
Mm,
the same bike, and it's fine. They're friends, but it's kind of like, and it's not about putting yourself above that because you've followed a spiritual path or you've done Kabbalah. It's just that you recognize that you've evolved a bit,
hmm
you've come on a different path, and you've got a different energy. You've recognized that you've got a soul, which before we didn't even talk about.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want to read this out. Vanessa's a biotech executive and the owner of Who What Woo. I love that name. Uh, a metaphysical guide to living your best life, a writer, a spiritual yoga philosopher teacher, a coach, empowering clients through meditation, self actualization, and holistic healing. I want a piece of all of that. Certified in Kundalini yoga, prenatal yoga, and various energetic healing disciplines. Vanessa's mission is simple, and I like this bit: to ignite your inner power, guiding you to live your utmost potential. She believes in the boundless capacity, I only made one mistake, of the human spirit to transcend and transform. I love that last line. She believes in the boundless capacity of the human spirit to transcend and transform, meaning you believe in people. So
Totally.
my first question is, why don't people believe in people? Why don't people believe in themselves? Because when I'm coaching, And, I coach some guys that are right at the top of the tree as executives and CEOs and so forth, Microsoft people. I'm asking you a question, but I'm giving the answer. Um,
Yes, no, please do. Please
and,
do. I would love that.
and when it comes to depth, or, there's always that thing they call imposter syndrome, which is just a made up term, which I looked up, and I realized it was sort of a manufactured term by a couple of therapists. Now,
Mm,
my question is always, well, if imposter syndrome had never been invented, you wouldn't have it.
correct.
So, so getting back, you believe, so Vanessa's mission is to ignite your inner power.
Mm,
Talk to me about inner power. Is that something we all innately have?
yeah. It's actually kind of funny because when I guess when I kind of came up with that term of igniting the inner power, there's now a TikTok trend about, sort of getting back their spark, right? There's this huge, sort of movement about people losing their spark or sort of losing this essence. And, I come from like more of a yogic discipline, and the idea is that there's two forces governing you, right? There are the force that is your true self, right? That's the pure, unchanging consciousness. And then there's everything else, right? Which is all your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so forth. And what people don't realize is that they're just running and operating on the other force, which is your thoughts, feelings, and everything else, and not actually their true self. And that's because of social conditioning, right? That starts very early on. You've lost yourself because you were never trained to know yourself. So essentially, as coaches like yourself and as a teacher, that's our job, is to just remind you of who you are. It's just dormant. Everything else, that other force, is just sort of clouding and creating, sort of interfaces, sort of blocking who you really are at soul level. And that person doesn't need to be worked on. It's just turning off all the other stuff, all the other emotions and mental patterns. We're shutting that down so that you come into your true self.
So is that a bit like saying, if you put that in another way, thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that. Is that a bit like saying everything you're seeking is already within you?
Correct.
So how do we lose that spark? I realize that, we can talk about paradigms and upbringing and patterning and wiring and peer groups and mothers and fathers and relationships, all of those layers. I know that kind of basic thing. How do we, I know how we lose the spark. How do we reignite it? How do we start believing that what we want already exists in us? Because that seems to be, even me as a coach, to convince people you already are confident. Confidence doesn't come from the outside. You already are worthy. Worthiness doesn't come from the outside. So I talk about the soul. I talk about the soul because I realize that motivational coaching and goal setting and you can do it and screaming at people, you know, isn't, may work for a sort of a 1 month journey, but ultimately it's the soul that it's connecting with the soul that awakens the real sparks, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, to answer that question, essentially, you have to realize that you're not just this physical body, right? Going back to what you said, you're a soul, you're a spirit, and the attachment to the physical body is where all of the chaos begins, right? And we talk about it, I guess, and it's similar to like the Kabbalah, the Kabbalah that school that we go to, is that it's that reactive mind, right? In yogic philosophy, it's called manas, right? And when you are living in reactivity, you can't be in you can't reach your true self, your pure self, right? So essentially it's about how do we shut off the reactive mind, and it's as simple as become a discerning witness that that what's happening, back to like this is the illusion, right? You become a discerning witness of it all. This is not happening to me. I'm part of this. This is something you're learning and you're evolving. This is the kind of, and you can put yourself in these states through different modalities, right? This is where I go into the yogic sort of, sort of philosophy, the meditations, and it's not just only from like a yogic perspective, right? There's many different modalities that also institute some sort of meditational practice, but it's something you have to do every single day. It's not a sloppy sort of effort where you do it once and I'm never going to think about, you know, my reactive nature yet, all my patterns are gone and everything else is, I'm fine, I'm perfect. You're not healing anything. You're just becoming more aware. It's an awareness. It's a state of, oh, I'm here today. I'm discerning and I'm witnessing all that's happening around me on this physical plane. And therefore, I'm not reactive. So then I am in my essence. I am my true self.
I love it. So
It's a very it's a little it's esoteric. It seems kind of like, whoa, that's a little, but it's as simple as that. It's teachers like yourself who remind, right? So all we're doing is reminding you. So all of this coaching is a reminder of who you are, because it's our nature. We were taught not to do these things, right? Our world, it's this illusion, so it's sort of like, things are happening to you. So that's where you seek out certain teachers and guides, to support you through this. And at some point, the goal is that they get to a place where they are now the teacher, right? They're teaching me.
yeah, when you talk about reactive, I love that because I mean that's quite Kabbalistic, pause, what a pleasure, pause.
Yeah.
And then when I talk to people, I talk to clients about ego, and I
Mhm.
find it a little bit of a challenge. As soon as I bring up the word ego, the first thing people think of is ego, vanity, and and then I explain that there's a healthy ego and there's a manipulative ego that's always talking to us, and it's what's. Would you agree that that's what's creating the reactiveness? That's what is creating the knee jerk, the ego telling us, you don't have to take that.
Mm.
You know, the ego is creating the fear that's creating the reaction.
Yeah, it's the belief that you're separate. We're all one. So the ego tells you you are separate from this, and that creates all of that distortion, right? When you believe that you are separate from this, or that, I'm different, I'm God, right? You start to get into that complex. You start going into this, and then you realize, oh, I've run away from God, essentially. And then you get to that place where you have a crisis, and then you go, oh wow, I've lost my spark, or I've lost my, I have to, something about me is, I can't remember who I am anymore, right? So the ego can draw you so far away from the light that you're now like, the light's still always there. It's just that you're at that place, right, where you've decided that I can do what God can do. I don't need all of this. I can be beyond my peers. I am this, I am that. And it's good to have ego. We need ego to help us have drive in our lives, right? To participate on this plane, right? We need it to, activate our, like, our interests, right? We need that sort of, like, I'm an Aries, so I need my fire, right, to get things done. That's my ego, but my identity should not be wrapped up in it. That's where I'm going to be separating myself from God. And usually, if you do that, it's very empty, and that's when you're usually calling your teacher saying, hey, I feel like I've lost myself. It's like, yeah, you did. You kind of thought that you could just do this all on your own, that you've kind of created yourself, and you've made the universe and so forth, right? So it's all about coming back to that and that meditative practice, always, starting off the day like that, really sets you up for that success.
Yeah, Kabbalah talks about partnering the light. So when that ego kicks in, and when you're feeling that reactiveness, recognizing it's the ego, and then going to the light, because the light is at the endless, like you're
Yes.
talking about all being one, that endlessness. The light is that. So we can always choose to partner the light instead of the ego. And it's a matter of saying, well, I'm reacting to the physical, I'm going to go to the light. So just giving that situation, that problem, that thought, just giving it up to the light.
Mm.
The Bala talks about, and I find that an incredible help
I
And
do too.
when I talk to clients about that, I usually put them through a meditation using light. It's a great help because just saying to people, um, the ego is creating this. It needs to be more unpacked. People don't get it right away.
Correct. Correct.
Creating that. Because it's the ego that's creating the fear. It's the ego that's creating the uncertainty. It's the ego that's directing that movie in the physical world. So
Precisely.
if we
Absolutely.
if we say to the ego, "You're fired as the director of my movie," you're fired as the director of my movie. I'm now partners with the light.
Light. There it is.
To talk that way.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. I actually love that analogy. You're fired. That and that's just it. I love what you said because it is, Leon, you know this. This is the work as a teacher. You have gotten that divine call that, this is what you're here to educate and to here to, help guide people. Not that you're giving them a power, right? So when clients come to me and they're like, "Oh my God," I'm not here to give you anything, right? I'm here to help you remember who you really are, right? But you've got to fire that ego, right? From taking, center stage and driving and directing it as it sees fit, right? You've got to decide that, hey, I don't like that, that part. We need to cut that out, right? So I think that that's a beautiful analogy, and that word ego, it's just like the word karma. It's misused. People don't really understand what it means, right? So there's a whole other layer on top of helping the client, right? Helping humanity is that, wait, let's get our definitions right, right? The ego is not all bad. There's good in the ego. There's good in the karma. There's
Yeah.
all, this is not, there's no good and bad necessarily. It's all that oneness. It's all good.
Yeah, karma is understood in society as a punishment, but it's not. In Kabbalah they call it tikkun,
Yeah.
which means correction. So it's actually an opportunity to correct ourselves, to move
Correct.
away from the ego, to connect to our soul. Connect to the soul, because the soul is clear. It doesn't. It's always pure.
Yes.
It's always pure. So if you go from your head to your soul, when you're concerned about something, you just take it straight down into your soul.
Mm,
Take it from your mind to your soul, and suddenly it's pure.
exactly.
So you take that garbage, if you will. In fact, in the Zohar, the Kabbalah, which is, what the Zohar is,
Yeah, I know it. This. Yeah.
they talk about it as filth. Filth.
Hmm.
Like it goes to that. You take it down, and you go, and the soul is pure, and you just go there.
Yeah.
Connect with light and move away from the ego. So that's and I'm bringing that a lot more and more. I'm finding that people are open, and you could probably explain this better to me. Is it that the cosmos, is it that the world is ready for this spiritual growth? Are people now searching on a search for more of this? Because I'm finding as I'm talking to people, it's not mumbo jumbo to them anymore.
It isn't. I
Like,
think there was a, yeah.
even people, high level people, executives, people, striving and wanting to get somewhere and competing, even people like that are now open to it. People that even 2 years ago were like, "What's he talking about?" Because first I tread a little bit gently because I think this guy's going to hang up on me. But then they want more of it, and
I
then
love it.
meditation and light and talking about the soul and talking about love, which these sort of leaders and executives were that word once upon a time just put fear through them, uh,
Love
and
at work. What do you mean? Love with work and money and
like,
yeah, yeah.
like, why are we talking about love? I want to get to the next step of my promotion.
Exactly, exactly. No, we're at that junction, right? I mean, many different systems, spiritual systems have talked about this moment in time, right? People believe that there's a cataclysm. I don't think it's an actual destruction, right? I think it's sort of like a sort of an energetic shift. that is taking place on this planet. And it's, you also see it with the Mayan calendar, right? You see it with the yogic, sort of philosophy, right? We're at the in the age of Kali Yuga, and all these different spiritual systems that all kind of lead us to this point in time where, whether it's precisely on this particular date doesn't really matter, but we're in this energy where people are becoming more awake, if you want to use that word, right? And awakening, it's like, people love using that word, like spiritual awakening is supposed to be this like flash of color, and it's like, it's chaotic and whatever. It's not actually. Spiritual awakening is quiet, and it's like a whisper. It's like it starts to subtly, you notice something, right? It's a remembering. It's like, what have I been doing the last 5 years? Wow, like it all kind of flashed away, right? And now they're in this moment where they're like, yeah, Leon, tell me more about love in the workplace.
Yeah.
Tell me more about empathy. And you're seeing it. You're absolutely right. I work in the corporate world, and you're seeing that there's a need for understanding, like even just from like a looking at people's sort of like not necessarily astrology, but like their charts in terms of like how you think, and if you're this color you think like this, and these people are really good with like doing these type of tasks, and so forth. But we're trying to make sense of it all, that like we all have our unique gifts, right? And sort of seeing that in the workplace, and people bonding over that, right? Or wanting to share their own spiritual practices. I get it all the time. People say to me, guess what, I meditated today. And it's like, two thumbs up, like that's great. Like, okay, that's great, but there's this a desire, but there's still that fear of, I don't know what I'm doing, right? And needing to be in the head, right? I need some sort of prescription, right? And we see people shifting out of that and starting to just listen, right? But obviously teachers like yourself, coaches like yourself, it's so important to keep doing what you're doing, because there's a hunger for it. And then if there's more out there, it makes it a lot easier to sort of help sort of process what they're going through. So I'm sure, like for myself, when I came across you, there was something that kind of, who's this guy, And then of course I'm like, oh, I see why I would like someone like this. He's gone through it all. He's went through it all. My Aries nature wants to conquer it all. It's like, I want to win in all these areas, but it's also that, oh, he's also in a Kabbalah class. Interesting, so there's that dynamic. So yes, you can do it all in essence, right? You can be that high charging CEO, and also be some serious spiritual guru, right? You can do it. And the blending of these things are coming together, and there's tons and tons of research I could send you on, with a wonderful man named Lance Secretan. And he started this research back in the 80s, and it's only now that you're starting to see, like, those papers, like, people are taking the dust off of them and saying, wait a minute, what was he saying? I think I want to implement this. So yeah, it is, we are at that time now.
I love it. What would you advise someone that's heard of spirituality, is inquisitive of spirituality, wants to be spiritual, and hasn't done anything about it? Is meditation the first step? Is yoga the first step? Is joining Kabbalah the first step? What would be the first sort of sneak preview into discovering spirituality, and wanting to sort of walk that spiritual path, but not knowing what to do first?
Yeah, there's no wrong or right answer. That's the thing with answering that question. With anyone who comes to me, they don't really necessarily know why they chose to talk to me. They just said, I felt an energy, I came across something, and it's like, that's great. This is part of it. Was like, welcome to your spiritual journey. There's no sort of prescriptive way to start it. It doesn't start with a breath work, or doesn't mean that you have to go off to a retreat or do some plant medicine of some sort. No, absolutely not. You are a spirit soul, so you've already started. You've always been on this spiritual journey. So it's just a matter of you're just now realizing that you want to implement certain modalities to help you, separate those patterns, right? So you know your true self, you become that discerning witness, right? You're not caught up in the illusion and losing yourself and going through the fluctuations of, what you have to deal with every time you retire at night. You wake up, and people always think, man, it was a great day yesterday. And then the expectation is that tomorrow is going to be great. And it's like, no, you got to work for it every day. Right. And so that's the first thing I always tell any client is that the reason why I'm where I'm at and I have my days, right, is because I'm so steadfast about waking up. And I have a whole system about what time you wake up at in the morning and why you do it really early in the morning. There's a lot of systems, spiritual systems out there about the morning. I mean, there's countless, if not most of them talk about these, particular hours at dawn. And I'm charging myself up before I start my day, because if I don't take care of my life, I have to deal with the outside world. The outside world is going to govern how it's going to work in my life, right? Like how I'm going to be feeling. So anyone who's starting, this journey, just know that there's no wrong or right way. Find a coach, find someone that, you resonate with, and just begin having that conversation about, you know, have you lost your spark? Or, I feel like I'm a bit confused at this juncture. This is how you start to sort of unfold.
Love it. Just a quick, before we wrap up, just a quick touch on miracles
Oh,
and why we don't recognize that every day is a miracle, and we don't recognize small miracles until we actually start our spiritual work. So someone that isn't into spirituality, that's just starting, they won't recognize miracles, but we actually have miracles every single day. But when we say the word miracles, people expect, you wave a magic wand and, a genie appears and asks you for three wishes. But I'm talking about recognizing miracles. It's a miracle that we woke up this morning, and people don't appreciate those miracles. Like, here's the thing, that if it's a small miracle, people think, well, that's it. They call it a coincidence or an accident, or they give different, they label it, but they're actual miracles. So if you can manifest small miracles, or small miracles are happening to you all the time because you're becoming more connected, you're becoming more spiritual, you start recognizing these small miracles, there's no limit. Because the reason I'm bringing this up is because manifestation is such a huge commercial subject. However, it means nothing unless you're aligned with that higher power, with that.
absolutely.
It means absolutely nothing. So, you know, when you start noticing those miracles and appreciating those smaller miracles, that's when you can start manifesting and really manifesting. But you have to recognize the miracles.
Absolutely. You said it so beautifully, Leon. That's exactly it, right? It manifesting without connecting to the higher power is complete mumbo jumbo. It's mumbo jumbo. It's not real. You can almost say that, yeah, I mean, sure, you manifested, some X amount of money and whatever, but, was it for the glory of God, right? You also don't want to manifest, right? It's sort of, yes, we live in this is a spiritual world. It's an energetic, yes, you can call forth certain things into your life, but is it aligned for your highest good? Is it aligned for the highest good of all? And if you're doing things like that, you don't know if you're calling on that type of energy that's going to sort of sustain you, sustenance, right? This is not the kind of energy you want to pull in, right? It's not by my own will. It's for the will of God. I don't want to do anything that would cause any sort of karmic imprint that would, that I have to learn a lesson from, right? So I have to trust that even without, quote unquote, I don't have without, you always with a lot. I have a hand. And sometimes I tell clients, just look at your hand. Have you ever sat down and just looked at your hand and looked at,
Now,
wow,
now,
yeah, like there's like all these rings and like, what does this all mean? It's a miracle. But if we didn't have all these grooves in our hands, we wouldn't be able to grip things. You
wow.
like it's
No,
like
because
it's just
it's granted.
it's so you start to look at everything. You go, unbelievable. Everything is moving. Everything is it's just it's amazing, right? Then once you're in that, get into that sort of like, what do they call it? Samadhi state, right? You can get to a place of meditation where you can actually sort of feel like you're merging with God, with the light, right? You feel
Yeah.
yourself, like sort of like effervescent, right?
One,
Yeah, that oneness, exactly.
how I can't believe that half an hour's gone by.
I
So,
know.
Pete, I'm very inspired. I thank you for everything that you've contributed
Thank you.
here between us. So thank you very much,
Thank
Vanessa.
you for having me. Yeah.
Uh, so people can get you on Instagram
Yes.
on SUYII.
Yes, Su Yi. That's my short middle name.
I'll put that in when I post this. I'll put that in. It's not at, is it? It's just SUYII.
Perfect.
What is
Yes.
that? What does that stand for?
Yeah, so I am of Nigerian descent, and so my middle name is Osasuyi, and that means God is worthy. And so all I did was just took the ending of my name and just called it Suyi.
I, I see. God is worthy.
Yes.
That's your
Yeah.
name. How lucky am I? I might become worthy after this.
You are so worthy. I'm so blessed to be in your presence. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for speaking. I'll have this posted, and we'll talk again.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
Take care.
Lots of love.
Lots of love. Bye.